There comes a time in your life when the world ceases to distract you, when the outer noise grows dim, and a deeper sound begins to rise from within. This is the call to transformation, not the kind that pleases the crowd, but the kind that disturbs the soul, ruptures comfort, and demands that you become who you were always meant to be, not a puppet of the world, but an unstoppable force, born from the darkest depths of your own becoming. Here are 10 truths that, once integrated, will make you unstoppable. There is a flame within you that no one else can see, a sacred fire that burns not for display, but for transformation. It is not the blaze that seeks attention, but the steady ember that endures through the nights of doubt, despair, and disconnection. To tend this fire, you must be willing to be alone, not lonely, but alone in the truest sense. Solitude is not exile, it is encounter. It is in solitude that you begin to hear your soul whispering beneath the noise of the world. When you step away from the constant stimulation of society, the opinions, the demands, the endless distractions, you create space for something far more ancient and wise to emerge from within. This fire does not flare at the command of others. It awakens in the silence where the false self begins to crack and fall away, and in that cracking, the light gets in. Your real self, the one you've buried beneath years of masks and adaptations, begins to surface, raw and unfamiliar, yet powerful beyond belief. But solitude is uncomfortable at first. You will want to escape it. You will reach for your phone, the television, another voice, anything to avoid the weight of your own presence. Stay in the stillness. Stay through the restlessness, for in that stillness, something begins to shift. You start to recognize the voice of your own wisdom, once drowned out by the crowd. You begin to feel the pulse of your deeper purpose, not given to you by the world, but inherited from something timeless within. There is no becoming without this fire, and there is no fire without solitude. The one who cannot be alone will always be dependent on the approval of others to feel alive. But the one who has walked alone into the wilderness of their own psyche and come back carrying the flame, they are unstoppable, not because they are louder than others, but because they are grounded in a source that no one else can access or take away. So tend to your inner fire, feed it with honesty, protect it with silence, honor it with patience, and trust that even when the world cannot see it, it is preparing you for something far beyond recognition. You will not need to prove yourself when you emerge. The fire will speak for you. You are not what was done to you. Though the echoes of past wounds may reverberate in your behavior, in your thoughts, and in the deepest chambers of your heart, they are not the totality of who you are. The pain you carry, the betrayals you endured, the neglect that silenced your voice, these are events, not definitions. They are chapters in your story, not your identity, yet it is easy to forget this. Pain has a way of convincing us that it is permanent, that what happened to us is who we are. When we are young and defenseless, we absorb the world like a sponge. Every unkind word, every abandonment, every trauma becomes internalized, not as something that happened, but as something we are. I was hurt becomes I am broken. I was left becomes I am unlovable. And so begins the great lie. The false belief that our value is determined by our suffering, but the soul does not see you that way. The deeper self remains untouched beneath all that happened to you. It waits patiently, like a buried root beneath winter's frost, knowing that spring will come, and it will, because healing is not about erasing the past. It is about changing your relationship to it. It is about standing in front of your own story with enough strength and clarity to say, yes, this happened, yes, it hurt, and no, it does not define me. You are not your trauma. You are the awareness that can hold that trauma with compassion. You are not your mistakes. You are the force that learns from them, transforms through them, and moves beyond them. The experiences that wounded you may have shaped your armor, your defenses, your coping mechanisms, but they did not create your essence. That essence existed before the wound, and it will exist long after. To believe you are only what was done to you is to remain imprisoned by the very thing that tried to destroy you. But when you begin to see your pain as a teacher, not a jailer, you step into your power. You realize that what hurt you may have broken your patterns, but it did not break your spirit. In fact, it revealed a depth within you that would have otherwise remained undiscovered. There is alchemy in this. The kind that turns wounds into wisdom, scars into symbols of survival. When you stop identifying with the event and begin identifying with the one who endured it, something ancient awakens in you. You begin to live from the center, not from the surface. And in doing so, you reclaim the authority over your own becoming. So no, you are not what was done to you. You are what you choose to do with what was done. You are the fire that rose from the ashes. You are the voice that refused to be silenced. You are the soul that remembered itself, even in the dark, and from that remembrance you will rise, slowly, surely, unstoppably. The parts of yourself you have been taught to hide, suppress, or deny, those very aspects you are ashamed of, are not your enemies. They are your shadow, and they are part of you, not because they are evil, but because they were exiled. They are the instincts you were told were inappropriate, the emotions you were punished for expressing, the desires you learned to fear. And so you push them down into the dark, hoping they would disappear. But the shadow does not disappear. It waits. It waits behind your reactions, behind your judgments, behind your patterns of sabotage. It speaks through the very behaviors you don't understand in yourself, the outbursts, the jealousy, the envy, the defensiveness. It reveals itself in the people you irrationally despise or blindly idolize. The shadow does not vanish with avoidance, it grows, and the more you deny it, the more power it has over your life, not because it is evil, but because it is unconscious. We live in a world that rewards the mask and punishes the truth. You learn to smile when you're enraged, to laugh when you want to cry, to say "I'm fine" when you're breaking inside. This performance becomes so second nature that you forget there is something underneath it, something more honest, more raw, more real. That rawness is your shadow, and it does not want to hurt you. It wants to be seen. It wants to be understood. Until you meet your shadow face to face, you will project it onto others. You will see in them what you refuse to see in yourself. You will blame them, judge them, fear them, not realizing that you are merely looking into a mirror. You may call others arrogant while denying your own repressed pride. You may despise weakness in others because it reminds you of the vulnerability you've never accepted in yourself. The outer conflict is merely a reflection of the inner split. But when you finally stop running, when you turn toward the shadow instead of away from it, something powerful happens. You begin to reclaim the energy you've spent hiding. You retrieve the life force trapped inside all that shame. The anger you were taught to suppress becomes boundary. The envy becomes vision, the fear becomes clarity. These energies, once integrated, become your allies. They no longer control you from the dark, they empower you from within. To integrate your shadow is not to become reckless. It is to become whole. It is to stand with all parts of yourself, not just the ones the world applauds. It is to bring consciousness to what was once unconscious, and in doing so, to reclaim your agency. The shadow does not seek domination. It seeks harmony. It wants to be part of the inner family, not the orphan in the basement. And when you welcome it, when you hold it without judgment, you become something the world rarely sees, a human being at peace with their own depth. You will not be unstoppable by pretending to be perfect. You will become unstoppable when you are whole. Wholeness is not the absence of darkness, but the courage to enter it, to sit with it, to listen, to learn, and to carry its wisdom into the light. This is not weakness. This is inner authority. This is real power, because the one who has made peace with their shadow can no longer be manipulated by it. They no longer fear being exposed because there is nothing left to hide. They have already seen themselves, and in that sacred seeing they have found liberation. The kind of liberation that does not need applause, does not seek revenge, and does not crumble under pressure. The shadow is not the enemy, it is the forgotten gatekeeper to your depth, your creativity, and your strength, and when you finally take its hand, not to conquer it, but to understand it, you will no longer be split within yourself. You will move as one. You will move from truth. You will move from wholeness, and nothing, no fear, no failure, no rejection, will stop you again. Discipline is not punishment. It is not a rigid system meant to suffocate the soul or strip life of its spontaneity. True discipline is an act of inner devotion, a sacred agreement between you and the deeper purpose that calls you forward. It is a loyalty not to the rules of the outer world, but to the unfolding of your own becoming. It is a vow you make, not to please others, but to protect what is most valuable within you. We often think of discipline as external control, imposed by authority, enforced by routine. But that is the discipline of fear, of conformity, of obedience without vision. Real discipline rises from within. It is born not of shame, but of reverence. Reverence for your time, reverence for your energy, reverence for the potential that lives in you, waiting to be shaped through consistent, intentional effort. Without discipline, the soul becomes scattered. It is pulled in 1,000 directions, lured by every passing impulse and every fleeting desire. You become fragmented, chasing dopamine, avoiding discomfort, drifting from task to task with no center. But when discipline is present, it gathers those fragments. It draws your attention inward and asks, what truly matters? And more importantly, are you willing to suffer for it? Not because you must, but because it is worthy. Discipline is a boundary you create to protect your purpose from being diluted. It is what allows you to say no, not out of repression, but out of clarity, no to distraction, no to self-betrayal, no to the parts of you that still seek short-term comfort over long-term meaning. And in that refusal, there is strength, there is direction, there is integrity. People often confuse freedom with the absence of structure. But the truth is, without discipline, you are enslaved, not by a person or a system, but by your own unconscious patterns. True freedom does not mean doing whatever you want, whenever you want. It means having the power to choose what aligns with your soul, even when it's hard, even when it hurts, even when no one is watching. And there will be days when it does hurt. Discipline will take you through valleys of fatigue, boredom, resistance, and doubt. You will want to quit. You will wonder if it's worth it. And in those moments, discipline becomes more than a tool, it becomes a prayer. A prayer that says, even now, I choose to stay the course, not because it is easy, but because it is sacred. To discipline yourself is to honor your potential not with words, but with action. It is to say, I will not abandon myself, not today, not again. It is the quiet, daily ritual of showing up, even when the mood is absent. It is the invisible thread that weaves your scattered efforts into something whole, something lasting, something true. You don't need to wait for motivation. You need to remember your devotion. Discipline is not about becoming rigid. It's about becoming reliable to yourself, to your calling, to the life that wants to emerge through you. It is not about denying your emotions. It is about not letting them dictate your direction. It is about placing your feelings in service to something greater than comfort. And when you live like this, you begin to carry yourself differently. You are no longer swayed by the tides of the world, no longer trapped in cycles of guilt and regret. You move with rhythm, with purpose, with quiet confidence. You do not need to explain yourself because your presence speaks of the work you've done in silence. So let discipline become your devotion. Let it be the altar upon which you place your excuses and watch them burn. Let it be the thread that binds your vision to reality. And know that with each act of discipline, no matter how small, you are becoming more of who you truly are. Not through force, not through fear, but through love, through loyalty to your own unfolding, and in that loyalty you become unstoppable. Projection is one of the most deceptive forces in the human psyche. It allows us to see what we cannot yet face in ourselves by unconsciously placing it onto others. What we disown internally, we experience externally, not as a part of us, but as something alien, threatening, or alluring in the world around us. We believe we are seeing another person clearly, but often we are only staring into a mirror disguised as them. The face we love or despise becomes a canvas onto which we paint our unacknowledged desires, fears, and wounds. This is not a punishment. It is a psychological necessity. The mind must find a way to deal with the overwhelming complexity of our inner world, and when it cannot integrate something, it casts it out. But what is cast out does not disappear, it simply moves into the shadow and resurfaces in disguised form. It becomes the anger you see in others, but not in yourself, the weakness you despise in someone else that mirrors your own vulnerability. The charisma or beauty you idealize because you cannot yet claim it within. Every reaction you have, especially the intense ones, is a clue. Your emotional responses are not random, they are the language of your unconscious. When someone irritates you far beyond reason, pause, ask yourself, what part of me is being shown here? When someone enchants or captivates you to the point of obsession, ask, what longing in me have I never given myself permission to feel? These projections, when made conscious, become gateways to integration. They show you what you have lost contact with, what you have exiled in order to survive. But most people never ask these questions. They remain locked in the illusion that the problem, or the solution, is out there. They go to war with others, trying to fix them, change them, punish them, or possess them, unaware that they are really trying to reconcile with a part of themselves. And so, the world becomes a battlefield of unresolved inner conflict. Relationships become arenas for projection, not connection. Love becomes a stage for reenacting unmet needs. Hatred becomes a mask for unacknowledged shame. To awaken is to recognize the mirror, to see that what provokes you is not a verdict on another's character, but a reflection of something within you seeking attention. This does not mean others are never at fault, or that you are responsible for their actions. It means that your perception is always filtered through your inner world. You cannot see clearly through a lens clouded with unhealed pain and unmet parts of the self. To own your projections is to reclaim power. No longer at the mercy of other people's behavior, you become a student of your own soul. Each encounter becomes a chance to see more of yourself, to gather the scattered pieces and bring them home. You begin to relate instead of react. You begin to choose your responses instead of being hijacked by them. And this shift, subtle but profound, is the beginning of psychological sovereignty. Projection is not your enemy, it is your teacher. It shows you where your work is. It points to the unloved, unacknowledged, and unintegrated parts of your psyche. And if you are willing to do the inner excavation, you will find that the people who once triggered you most intensely were delivering sacred messages from your unconscious. They were never your jailers, they were your guides. This is the paradox. The more you see yourself in others, the more compassion you develop for them and for yourself. You begin to realize that we are all projecting, all carrying wounds, all trying to make sense of the unseen forces that shape our lives. And in this realization, there is a softening, a humility, a deeper, quieter strength that no longer needs to control or blame. When you stop treating projection as a sentence, some final, unchangeable judgment about who you or others are, and start treating it as a mirror, you step into a new kind of freedom. You become the observer and the participant. You learn to pause, reflect, and integrate. And in that integration, you become more whole. You cannot stop projecting entirely. It is part of being human, but you can become aware of it. You can use it. You can grow through it, and the more you do, the less you are driven by unconscious forces, and the more unstoppable you become, not because you are perfect, but because you are honest, integrated, awake. You do not flee from your own reflection. You stand before it, eyes open, and you learn. Purpose does not arrive wrapped in clarity. It does not speak in the language of comfort or appear at your doorstep with a clear set of instructions. Purpose is not something you simply choose like a career or a goal. It is something that calls you, often through the very experiences you wish you could forget. It emerges not from the light, but from the abyss, from the moments of collapse, disorientation, and despair. It is born in the places where your former self no longer fits, and the new self has not yet taken shape. The abyss is the space between who you were and who you are becoming. It is the breakdown of illusions, the shattering of false identities, the unraveling of narratives that once gave you meaning. And when you find yourself in that abyss, it feels like death, not because you are dying in the physical sense, but because something within you is being stripped away. The roles, the masks, the borrowed dreams, they begin to fall, and you are left raw, uncertain, exposed. This is not failure, it is initiation. The world teaches you to fear these moments. It tells you that if your life falls apart, you have somehow failed. But that is a shallow interpretation. What we call a breakdown is often a breakthrough in disguise. The psyche does not move forward by clinging to the old. It transforms by descending, by confronting what has been avoided, by facing the truth of who you are beneath all the performances. And in that confrontation, something begins to awaken. Slowly, like a flame struggling to burn in the dark, you begin to hear a quieter voice, one that does not come from ego or ambition, but from depth. This voice does not shout, it whispers. It does not flatter, it reveals. It speaks not of what will make you important, but of what will make you whole. It asks not what you want from the world, but what the world is asking of you. This is where purpose lives. In the quiet after the storm, in the rebuilding after the ruin, in the questions that arise when all the answers have failed you. It does not always promise happiness. It often asks for sacrifice. But it gives you something far more enduring than pleasure. It gives you meaning, and when your life is rooted in meaning, you become resilient, focused, and unshakable. Purpose does not necessarily feel good. It feels true. It demands your participation. It pulls you toward the very places you once ran from, because it knows your strength is forged in those very fires. And when you align your life with that inner truth, you no longer chase success to validate your worth. You no longer need applause to know you're valuable. You move from the inside out, not driven by pressure but by presence. But to reach this, you must allow the abyss. You must let go of the fantasy that life is meant to be a constant ascent. Real transformation is not linear, it is cyclical, it requires descent, and in that descent you lose control, but you gain vision, you lose comfort, but you gain clarity, you lose the false self, but you uncover the eternal self, the one who has always known why you are here, even when you forgot. You cannot fabricate purpose through intellect alone. You discover it through experience, through endurance, through the courage to face the emptiness without trying to fill it too quickly. The abyss is not your enemy, it is your teacher. And the deeper you go, the more refined your sense of direction becomes, not because someone told you what your life should be, but because you listened when everything else fell silent. So if you are in the dark, do not rush to escape it. Sit in it, feel it, let it undo you, because it is in this undoing that your deeper calling is being shaped. You are not lost. You are being remade, and when you emerge you will not be who you were, but you will be closer to who you were always meant to be. From the abyss comes authenticity, from the abyss comes strength, from the abyss comes purpose, and once you've touched that, no storm, no failure, no rejection can stop you. There is a secret longing at the center of the human psyche, not for another person, not for recognition, not for worldly success, but for inner union. Beneath all our striving and suffering is the silent yearning to become whole. This wholeness is not achieved by perfection, but by integration. And at the core of this integration is the inner marriage, the sacred union of opposites that live within every soul. We are all composed of polarities, masculine and feminine, light and dark, order and chaos, thought and feeling. For most, these forces remain at war within. We over-identify with one side while banishing the other. We become overly rational, suppressing our intuition. Or we drown in emotion, unable to anchor ourselves in structure. We exalt the strong and deny the tender. We praise logic but fear the mysterious, and in doing so we remain divided, internally fragmented and externally unfulfilled. This division shows up everywhere, in our relationships, where we seek in others what we have not yet accepted in ourselves, in our work, where we strive for excellence but lack inner peace, in our choices, where we repeat the same patterns, driven by forces we do not understand. Without inner union, we are forever caught in projection, conflict, and confusion. The world becomes the battlefield of our unresolved inner tensions. The inner marriage is the antidote. It is the conscious recognition and reconciliation of opposites. It begins when you stop treating parts of yourself as enemies to be fixed and start treating them as energies to be integrated. When you stop suppressing your vulnerability and start listening to what it reveals. When you honor your ambition without abandoning your compassion, when your strength learns to bow before your softness, and your softness learns to trust your strength, this union does not happen overnight. It is not a moment of enlightenment, but a process of inner courtship. You must get to know the parts of yourself you've long ignored, the inner child who still cries out for safety, the inner warrior who longs to act without apology, the inner mother who nurtures without conditions, the inner king or queen who governs with wisdom and presence. Each archetype, each polarity, has a role to play in the theater of your soul. To bring these forces together requires attention, reflection, patience. It demands that you pause and witness your inner reactions, not to judge but to understand, to ask, what part of me is speaking right now? What part have I silenced? What part is missing from this decision? The answers will not always be clear, but they will begin to reveal the map of your own unconscious terrain. And slowly, the war inside begins to quiet. The masculine within you no longer dominates with cold control, but holds space with disciplined presence. The feminine within no longer floods you with chaos, but flows with intuitive knowing. Logic and emotion begin to cooperate rather than clash. Action and stillness take turns guiding you. You become less reactive, more intentional. Less dependent on outer approval, more aligned with inner truth. This is power, not the power that conquers others, but the power that arises from being rooted in your own totality, the kind of power that can lead with grace, create with depth, love with clarity, and endure with resilience. You become a vessel through which harmony expresses itself, not by eliminating conflict, but by reconciling it within. The inner marriage is not about becoming one thing. It is about becoming everything you are. It is the realization that the sacred does not live only in the light, but also in the dark, that your wholeness was never lost, only scattered, and that through this union, you become not a copy of someone else's ideal, but an original expression of truth, your truth. When the inner marriage takes place, you stop searching for completion in the outer world. You stop looking for someone to save you, fix you, or fill you. You may still love deeply, serve passionately, and strive boldly, but not from lack. From fullness, from integration, from the profound peace of a psyche no longer at war with itself. And in that peace, you become unstoppable, not because you are unbreakable, but because you are whole. Because you have become a sanctuary for opposites, because you have reconciled heaven and earth, fire and water, silence and song, within yourself. Authenticity is not a personality trait. It is not a trend, a posture, or a performance. It is a path, and not an easy one. It is a warrior's path, because to live authentically requires courage far beyond what most imagine. It demands that you choose truth over approval, integrity over belonging, and inner alignment over outer acceptance. It is not the loudest voice in the room, but the quietest one that refuses to lie, even when silence would be safer. The world will always offer you a script. This is how you should speak, dress, think, feel, dream. It will hand you 1,000 masks, each designed to help you fit in, succeed, or avoid rejection. And most people take the mask gladly because it buys them comfort. It buys them safety, but that safety is a prison. That comfort slowly poisons the soul, because deep down, you always know when you're betraying yourself, even if no one else can see it. Authenticity is the refusal to betray yourself, even when it costs you everything the world told you to chase. It is the decision to listen to the voice within, especially when it contradicts the noise around you. It is choosing discomfort over deception. It is daring to disappoint others rather than abandon yourself. This path will not always feel good. In fact, at times it will be excruciating. You will lose people, not because you are wrong, but because you are no longer playing the role they cast you in. You will be misunderstood, because your truth doesn't fit their story. You will face loneliness, not because you are unworthy, but because you are no longer willing to be anyone but yourself. And yet, every time you speak when your voice trembles, every time you show up as you are instead of how you're expected to be, every time you follow your inner knowing rather than external pressure, you reclaim a part of your soul. You gather the scattered pieces of your identity and bring them home. You become less fragmented, less dependent, less reactive. You become more whole, more clear, more grounded. Authenticity is not recklessness. It does not mean saying everything you think or acting without consideration. It means aligning your outer life with your inner reality. It means making choices that reflect your values, not your fears. It means honoring the unique imprint of your soul, not just when it's easy, but especially when it's hard. The authentic path is a lifelong process of shedding everything that is not truly you. It is the undoing of conditioning, the unlearning of masks, the gradual revelation of what lies beneath the armor, and what you will find there is not weakness, but power, a quiet, unwavering power that does not need to prove itself, a presence that speaks through actions, not noise, a strength that does not seek domination, but radiates from being whole. This kind of authenticity transforms everything it touches. It deepens relationships because it invites real connection. It clarifies purpose because it aligns action with essence. It liberates creativity because it removes the fear of judgment. And perhaps most importantly, it dissolves the illusion that your worth is tied to performance. You realize you are not here to be liked. You are here to be real. And when you walk this path long enough, something profound happens. You stop asking for permission to be who you are. You stop waiting for the world to accept you. You accept yourself so completely that the world's rejection no longer breaks you. It simply redirects you toward more truthful ground. You become sovereign-centered in something the world cannot touch. This is why authenticity is a warrior's path. It is not soft. It is not sweet. It is forged in fire and tested by solitude. But it is the only path that leads to freedom. Not just the freedom to do what you want, but the freedom to be who you are, without apology, without disguise, without shame. And in that freedom, you are no longer ruled by the world. You move through it not as a chameleon, but as a force, not needing to fit in, but daring to stand out, not striving to impress, but embodying your truth so deeply that it speaks without words. When you are authentic, you are not easily manipulated. You cannot be bribed with praise or silenced by rejection. You know who you are. You know what matters, and that knowing makes you unshakable. That is why authenticity is not comfort. It is confrontation. It is not escape. It is embodiment. It is not easy. It is essential, and if you walk this path, truly walk it, you may not always be liked, but you will be free, and in that freedom, you will be unstoppable. The soul does not rush. It is not concerned with deadlines, titles, or appearances. It does not measure life in hours or outcomes, in promotions or popularity. The soul speaks a different language, one that is ancient, slow, and deeply rooted. To live from the soul is to move from a place that is untouched by the noise of the world. It is to become aligned with something that cannot be destroyed, not because it is invincible, but because it was never built by the ego in the first place. There is a part of you that existed before the world told you who you should be. It existed before the trauma, before the expectations, before the disappointments and ambitions. That part of you is not bound by time. It does not live in the past nor fear the future. It is not driven by fear or scarcity. It is simply present, patient, whole, eternal. This is the soul, and though you may forget it, it never forgets you. In a culture addicted to speed, comparison, and surface-level success, to live from the soul is a radical act. You are taught to move fast, to produce constantly, to keep proving your worth through external validation. But the soul does not operate in that terrain. It unfolds slowly, organically. It is not interested in your resume. It is interested in your essence. It wants not what makes you impressive, but what makes you true. When you live only from the ego, from the part of you that seeks approval, control, and recognition, you live in perpetual anxiety, because the ego is never satisfied. It always needs more validation, more control, more progress. It races against time, terrified of irrelevance and obsessed with status. And in this race, you exhaust yourself. You lose touch with meaning. You mistake momentum for purpose. But when you return to the soul, everything changes. You stop measuring your life by how much you've achieved and start listening to whether you are aligned. You no longer ask, what will make me successful, but what feels real. You do not chase moments. you become present to them. You do not try to dominate time, you dance with it. You begin to trust the seasons of your life instead of fighting them. There will be winters when everything seems still, silent, and empty. The world may call it failure. But the soul knows otherwise. It knows that gestation happens in the dark, that the most profound transformation occurs beneath the surface, in the unseen. You learn to honor these seasons. You stop demanding constant blooming and begin to respect the wisdom of pause, reflection, and regeneration. This shift doesn't make you passive, it makes you powerful, because your power is no longer derived from how quickly you move, but from how deeply you are rooted. The one who lives from the soul moves slowly, but with great force. Their words carry weight, their presence commands silence. They do not need to prove themselves because they are anchored in something eternal. Living from the soul also reconnects you to others in a deeper way. You stop performing and start relating. You listen not just to respond, but to feel. You see past people's masks and into their essence. Your life becomes less about competition and more about communion. You realize that everyone is carrying something invisible, and from that knowing, you grow gentler, not weaker, but wiser. To live from the soul is to remember who you are beneath all the layers the world put on you. It is to come home to your truth again and again, even when it is inconvenient, even when it costs you approval or comfort. It is to walk slowly, speak honestly, and act from alignment rather than fear. You are no longer manipulated by urgency or seduced by distraction. You are guided from within. This kind of life will not always be easy. It may take longer. It may look different. You may feel misunderstood. But you will not feel lost. You will know deep in your bones that you are exactly where you need to be, not because it is perfect, but because it is true. The soul does not promise speed. It promises depth. It does not promise applause. It promises peace. It does not fear time, because it is timeless. And when you live from there, from that still, sacred place within, you do not need to shout to be heard. You do not need to chase what is already yours. You do not need to run. You simply become. You unfold. You embody. You trust. And in that quiet trust, you become unstoppable, not by force, not by strategy, but by presence, because nothing is more powerful than a human being who remembers their soul. You will be unstoppable not because the world finally accepts you, but because you have accepted yourself, fully, fiercely, and without apology. The world cannot shake a person who has met themselves in their totality. So meet yourself, not the mask, not the persona, the whole of you, integrate it, embody it, and then nothing, not failure, not rejection, not even fear, will stop you. Because you won't be moving for the world, you'll be moving from the soul.